What if America adopts China's model? It might actually win global competition, but it would also become a completely different country. Today, many policymakers quietly believe something uncomfortable. China may have discovered a system that builds faster, grows faster, and defeats competitors faster than democratic economics. So today, let's run a thought experiment. Imagine this. At a critical moment in history, United States decide to win using China's model. What would happen? Let's rewind time, back to the early 1980s. At that moment, the United States was being overwhelmed by Japan, not only in global markets, but inside its own economy. Japan's semiconductor industry controlled nearly 50% of the global market. Japanese cars were outselling American brands both abroad and at home. Almost half of American trade deficit was flowing to Tokyo. Factories kept shutting down. Workers lost their jobs in massive numbers. Runaway inflation eroded wages. Government debate surged rapidly. And for the first time in decades, more and more Americans began asking a question that once felt unthinkable. Is America declining? Does the future already belong to Japan? Now imagine this moment, an era of anxiety, panic, and uncertainty. And in Washington, leaders reach a very different conclusion. If the United States want to defeat Japan and Europe in industrial competition, then it must change the rules. So Washington decides to adapt a super growth model, a system where the state mobilizes power, coordinates industry, and directly competes with foreign rivals. In other words, winning becomes a national command. The first step, America enters industrial war model. In 1922, the White House signed the National Security Industrial Act. The same year, a new institution is created, the National Economic Planning Commission. The second step is the creation of national champions. Soon several companies are singled out, Boeing, General Motors, and Intel. They are no longer just public corporations. They are given a new identity, instruments of national competition. The government began systematically intervening in their finance. Unlimited low-interest loans, tax exemptions, energy price subsidies, massive government contracts. Profit no longer matter. Short-term lose no longer matter. There is only one evaluation standard. Can these companies push Japanese and European competitors out of the market? The third step is the wartime absorption of key industries. At this point, the state is no longer satisfied with merely supporting industry. Now it begins taking control. Energy, aviation, heavy industrial, strategic manufacturing, core technologies. These sectors are officially defined as national capacity. They are no longer fully governed by market logic. Fragmented companies are forcibly consolidated into massive national champion corporations. R&D departments are unified. Technology goals are set certainly. Any cost is justified. The mission is simple. Catch up with advantaged foreign rivals. And for the first time, national debate is used on a massive scale to invest directly in factories themselves, rebuilding America's industrial muscle from the ground up. The first step is the birth of an infrastructure leviathan. America's infrastructure is aging, so the government launched the largest debate expansion in its history. No more waiting for private capital. No more arguing about return on investment. The state used debate like a web. Within just 1 decade, high-speed rail networks across the continent, automated megaports run day and night on the western coast. Energy systems are rebuilt. Communication networks are rebuilt. Logistics costs fall dramatically. Every second of production is calculated. The fifth step is attracting capital like preparing a battlefield. To rebuild supply chain, America does more than simply welcome investors. It prepares everything in advance. The federal government reclaims part of the country's land development rights and designing massive industrial zones. The rules are simple. Huge continuous land plots, electricity already installed, Water already installed, roads already built. Factory rents are reduced to almost symbolic levels. Companies no longer need to solve external problems. They do not need to negotiate with local governments. You simply arrive and factories can begin operating immediately. The sixth step is the final battle, labor efficiency, because everyone knows something. Japan's real advantage is not machines. It is workers. Workers living in cramped dormitories, working over 2,200 hours a year. Treating the company like family, never getting vacations, never quitting. So if America wants to win, it must change its own workforce. And so the United States began dismantling the system it once took pride in. Labor unions are dissolved. Strikes are declared threats to national security. Minimum wages are frozen. Unemployment benefits are cut. The legal system tilts completely toward capital. Corporation responsibility for healthcare and pensions is reduced to barely minimum. And the workers, after losing their bargaining power, they are left with only one option: work longer hours and work harder. So if the government is spending this much money, where does the money come from? Because once industrial subsidies begin, once infrastructure debate keeps pulling up, once national champion companies start consuming massive fiscal resources year after year, the scale becomes enormous. In 2025, building just 1 kilometer of high-speed rail in the United States cost about $120 million. Meanwhile, China, with labor costs at a fraction of America's and with far greater power to acquire land, spends roughly $3 trillion every single year on infrastructure. So how can a government sustain spending in that scale? Corporate tax? No, because corporations need tax cuts to stay competitive. What about taxing households directly? Also no. That would trigger open political conflict. So the state begins searching for another source of funding, something stable, something hidden, something that can last for decades. The future of its own residents. The first change is subtle. Universal welfare does not disappear overnight. It retreats quickly. Pensions are reduced. Healthcare coverage narrows. Food stamps, housing subsidies, one by one they shrink. Even personal bankruptcy protections are tightened, sometimes abolished. But what replaces universal welfare is not the absence of welfare. It is something different. Conditional welfare. Social protection is no longer tied simply to citizenship. Instead, it becomes linked to where you live, what you own, and above all, property. Then comes a critical shift. Through urban renewal, inheritance tax, and compulsory acquisition, the federal government gradually regains control over land in core cities. Land is no longer treated as a natural resource. It becomes a state-controlled asset pool. Now the government decides where housing can be built, how much can be built, when it is built, and what price it enters the market. Soon, urban structure itself begins to change. A number of cities are designed as a strategy grass plots. In those cities, industrial parks and business districts concentrate. Headquarters of national champion cluster together. Research centers expand. High-paying jobs stack vertically. Advanced infrastructure arrive first. Then comes the decisive move. Around the economic course, the government builds new residential districts. They are embedded with the best schools, the best hospitals, and the best social resources. From this moment on, housing is no longer just a shelter. It becomes something else entirely. A path to education, a path to healthcare, a path to stable employment, a path to social security. Meanwhile, land supply remains constricted. Opportunities concentrate in only a few cities. Other regions lose jobs, lose investment, and lose people. Population flows towards the core. Housing prices are no longer driven by sentiment. They become the outcome of institutional design. When early victories in state-led competition appear, optimism spreads. The media declares America is defeating Japan. America is back. Real estimates become fully financialized. Price raise liar after liar. Quietly, price-to-income ratio reached 20 times, then 30 times. Economists celebrate, sociologists panic, because American labor had become extraordinarily usable. A 30-year-old engineer with a 30-year mortgage no longer negotiates. He cannot quit, he cannot strike, he cannot even afford to get sick. Rising housing price create a powerful illusion. Paper wealth. Workers watch their house, appreciate, and believe they are become richer. But the illusion hides something deeper, exploitation. And more importantly, it makes people grateful to a system that exhausted them while handing them an acid. By the late 1918s, the experiment is complete. From the outside, America has won. Japan's semiconductor bubble collapsed. Europe slides into stagnation. Highways shining, airplanes dominate the skies, agorism began ruling the world. But inside the miracle, something else happened. A country once known for freedom now works at 2 in the morning. Children raised in suburban house now live in 20 square meters apartments on the edge of the city, dreaming only of paying off school district mortgage before 60. What the state achieved was enormous, a massive transfer of wealth. Household debate became fuel. Corporate expansion became victory. China began in the 1980s from extremely poverty. Through price control and the household registration system, people were tied to land and factories, focused into high-intensity self-exploitation. Every drop of surplus was poured into industrial competition. The other side of concentrating resources to accomplish big things was silent endurance. Low wages, long hour, minimum wealth. The American version of this model would be expensive because it must purchase consent. The Chinese version appears efficient because refusal is not an option. But this model contained a paradox. When the state finally wins the industrial war, people are too exhausted to create another generation. China may win the global competition for a time, but inside forest of steel and concrete, it may slowly lose its future.